Welcome to This Week in Local, a Locology podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Locology analysts Mike Bolin and Charles Laughlin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Charles Laughlin, Senior Analyst at Locology. I'm joined by my colleague, Mike Bolin. Mike, how's it going?
Hi, Charlie. Going well.
Great. So, Mike, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so one thing I've been looking at over the last week is some rumors that are swirling around Apple's sort of toying around with AI. So this sort of stems from some reporting done by Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who is of course, a well-known sort of Apple rumor hound. And he's uncovered that Apple is developing a sort of conversational AI tool called Apple GPT, or that's, I guess, the working title for now, allegedly being tested now internally among employees with a sort of wider rollout and, splashy Apple-like announcement to come next year. And what this thing is essentially a sort of Chat GPT-like tool that lets you do a range of things across Apple products. So that's everything from, find the closest Korean barbecue to, finding something to watch on your Apple TV, to, setting an alarm clock and finding out about weather. And essentially, when you look at that list, that's Siri's job. So the question this all leads to is that, what is the fate of Siri if Apple is indeed looking at this sort of, Chat GPT like native product? And the sort of TLDR version that we've been talking about is that Siri will likely be finally and eventually taken out to the woodshed. We don't really see a world in which Siri survives any sort of Chat GPT based sort of internal competitor. And one of the reasons there, to put it bluntly, is that just Siri's terrible. It's like comically dysfunctional. It sort of works for like predictable, what I call system functions. And these are the things that like my in-laws love and they use it for, and they think Siri's great because they use it for like setting timers and like, weather updates, is it going to be sunny today? Stuff like that. But, getting it to do any like sort of answer practical questions turns into this just frustrating exchange. It just doesn't work. It falls down. But despite all that, I think Apple knows this. Apple knows it's terrible. It's hesitant to kill, or it has been hesitant to kill Siri because it's so embedded across Apple's like signature cross-device ecosystem. It's sort of this mesh that the sort of switching costs are high for Apple just because it's so embedded. And I think more than that, Apple doesn't really have, or hasn't up until now, had a viable replacement to justify that sort of uprooting. And I think one of the reasons that goes back to the fact that, AI and search and these things aren't just Apple's core competencies. Most Siri searches hand off to Google. So essentially, the point is that all changes now, that the bar has not only been raised with just underlying AI functionality, but when you look at sort of the GPT-based technologies, these are things that are available through companies like OpenAI, through APIs. So it's finally something Apple can just sort of pick up and run with. And it's like long-standing answer to the sort of the problem, the internal problem, the Achilles heel that has been Siri. So you could say that Apple's been like waiting years for a technology like GPT to come along because, the problem is like the contrast. Like Apple has, as we know, just such a sort of a focus on elegant UX and elegant user experience. And all these years, it's sort of been just like dragged down by Siri. So this is something, again, it's been waiting for. And in closing, I'll say that all the above applies not just, across that cross-device ecosystem, your iPhone, Apple TV, all the places where Siri's embedded. But there's sort of one product where like a decent voice assistant, which Siri is not, is sort of like a make or break thing. And that is the Apple Vision Pro. And I've been saying that this device is dead on arrival if Siri is going to be the sort of brains and the voice UX input. And that's not just because Vision Pro could be sort of a key piece of Apple's sort of hardware and wearables ecosystem, which is an article we actually recently wrote on Locology Insider. I'll encourage people to go read that. We wrote all about Vision Pro and like the long game. But that aside, it's a device that is going to be particularly reliant upon voice input, more so than your cell phone and your computer, because even though it has these sort of like apparently magical gesture-based inputs, one of the main one of the main UX inputs is going to be voice. There's no keyboard. There's no little Apple TV remote. Like all of these other sort of hardware products have a physical input sort of mechanism. So for Apple Vision Pro, it's going to be a combination of gestures and voice. So because it's so reliant on that, Siri is just not going to cut it. So if Apple does go in this direction, it's not only just sort of like raises the bar across its product categories that just like I was talking about, but I think it also secondarily helps future-proof itself for the sort of Vision Pro sort of product ramp up that we're going to see in the next, 5 years or so. So that's what we're looking at, Charlie. I'm not sure what you think about that.
Well, a couple things. Is the Siri brand, I mean, I know you're not a big fan of Siri. You made that pretty clear, but is the Siri, I don't know if it's a brand or name, is that going away? Or is Siri going to become just a lot better because of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess there are pros and cons there. Siri, for all the reasons I mentioned, has some sort of brand baggage, but also it's embedded. It's a known quantity. So I think Apple will have to really, do a whole sort of, SWOT analysis around like whether or not they keep that. They may
Should
decide
she
to
have an
leave.
English accent? Should it, all that sort of thing? Yeah.
And they could, somewhere in that, SWOT, quadrant grid is like the fact that GPT right now is a very sort of hot sort of brand, and it's something that they might want to lean into. Like I said, the working title is Apple GPT. They might want to turn a new leaf and with that take the opportunity to rebrand it. We don't know if that sort of GPT, Chat GPT, and all this sort of the AI hotness of the moment is going to be sustainable, and it's something they're going to want to lean into long term. So I don't know the answer to your question, but I think it's a good one. And there are pros and cons. Do they stick with Siri?
Yeah, is the brand equity outweighed by the brand baggage, for example?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So the real interesting stuff, Siri GPT, I think they would be a huge mistake if they called it that. But now, also, does Apple losing any sort of IP strength because they're basically building it on top of other people's AI technology? I assume that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is there any inherent IP there?
Yeah, as we've talked about in the past, the business model of OpenAI is going to be that like B to B to C. It's going to be licensing. It's going to be APIs. So I think that Apple could be like one of ChatGPT's biggest biggest customers, excuse me, in terms of just licensing it on a mass scale. Now, what they build on top of that, I think they can probably maintain some IP. But the underlying nuts and bolts of the large language models, of course, comes from an OpenAI or any of its competitors that continue to creep up. Or, we're talking about Apple here. It likes to do everything in-house, and it usually acquires its way towards that end in terms of just having like really strong vertical integration. So it may build something.
Do they have the horses to make an acquisition here?
Right.
I mean, they're big. Yeah.
I don't think they would acquire ChatGPT, but they could acquire the type of company that gets them closer to that underlying technology. But yeah, Apple's a company that likes to have, in-house technology. So we'll see what
their own OS, et cetera. Okay, well, unanswered but interesting questions, I guess. I'd like to talk about X, and specifically, I know everyone is dumping on X, the rebrand. I think for good reason. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this was that. And I've heard a lot of conversations about this. I'm sure you have as well, and thought about it as I have. And what's interesting is that Elon Musk, owner of Twitter, now X, is not exactly new to building good brands. I mean, Tesla is a great brand. You could argue SpaceX maybe in a more narrow sense, is a good brand as well. So it's not like he's immune to the idea that brands are important. Yet this seemed very throwaway, even though
Yeah.
X has been sort of floating around him for a while, as you point out, and something I think you're working on. Um, he's been throwing this X thing out. And I remember X, the Everything app, was a phrase that came out kind of right after he acquired Twitter, or
Correct.
around the time he was acquiring Twitter. I forget exactly what the timing was. And I thought, oh, X, the Everything app, that has a ring to it, I guess. This was telegraphed a while back. And I think we can have a conversation about whether we think X is good or bad, or, a good execution of a brand, bad execution. I think the consensus is pretty clear that this is kind of shoddy. Whether there's a long-term idea behind this that's interesting, I think is worth asking. And I think the idea seems to be this becoming a sort of a super app brand. The Twitter is, the idea all along was sort of somehow evolving Twitter into a super app, and which raises a big interesting question: is there demand for a super app? Does the world need X the Everything app, or whatever Elon has in mind? And this is something I think about a lot, because I think super apps is a fascinating topic. I do, as you know, I've been around the world a lot. I've spent a lot of time in Asia, and I know that for example, if you go to Vietnam, one thing I share with the late Anthony Bourdain is a love for Vietnam. It's a great country, a lot of fun to visit. But if you go there, you will not be able to function without having the Grab app on your phone.
Mhm.
Grab is basically a ride hailing service that has evolved into payments and food delivery and all. I've seen a lot of Vietnamese cities from the back, sitting on the back of a Grab motorcycle taxi. And so, there are companies like this all over the world that have used either ride hailing or messaging or payments or something as either logistics or fintech as a starting point, or social as a starting point, to try to build a super app. And they've had mixed success. There's a lot of apps that do more than one thing, but I don't think the only true super app in the world is still WeChat in China.
Mhm.
And that is successful on a massive scale. Like, I think I wrote it down. It's like 1.6 or 1.7 billion monthly average user. Just crazy, crazy numbers, for WeChat. But WeChat is a messaging app that evolved into a super app in China, a country that really kind of closed itself off to all the apps of the world that we can think of, like Google and Facebook and so on and so on. So it's sort of, this ecosystem sort of this app evolved in a very unique ecosystem that isn't replicated anywhere else. And the idea that there's a need for a super app in North America, for example, I would challenge that, because we have Amazon, we have all the Meta apps, we have Google, et cetera.
Point
We have a
solution.
handful of apps that we're used to using that kind of, when you add it all together, they're kind of a aggregated super app. So is there a reason for something like X to come in and kind of do all of those things? Because to be a true super app, you really have to do certain things. You have to have a social element, a messaging element, an e-commerce element, a logistics element, and a
Payments.
fintech element. To say, that's a lot,
Yeah.
and we get those things through a handful of apps that we have embedded usage in. And so I'm
Yeah.
very skeptical that this is the way for Elon to justify this acquisition. I
Mhm.
don't know what you think, Mike.
So, yes, it's interesting in sort of the Western world, the super app failing like a sort of WeChat is really the iPhone home screen, because as you
Right.
pointed out, it's all of those sort of like best of breed individual point solutions. You go to Instagram for your social and social sharing, you go to PayPal for your payments, and it's just Uber for your ride sharing. It's like these individual point apps have like done a better job than anyone's been able to sort of combine
Mhm.
them all in one. But I think that like it's as Scott Galloway likes to point out, it's sort of the holy grail. Like if you think about it, if you can pull off a super app, you have a
Sure.
few things. You have scale, you have stickiness, and you have sustainability. That's, I guess, we'll call it the three S's: scale, stickiness, and sustainability. And
Sure.
sustainability,
You heard
by
it here
that I mean,
first, everyone.
yeah,
Yeah.
by that I mean recurring revenue. So
Mhm.
those are just obviously very strong sort of business metrics to go after. And back to the sort of like, can X pull it off? As you pointed out, there are a lot of sort of components that are required for a super app, right? You have payments, you have a social graph, you have some sort of like communications mechanism, whether it be like chat based.
There has to be. You have to be talking through it. Yeah.
E-commerce, ride hailing, and all these things. And I've always
You have to be
said
buying
that, like,
tickets or travel or something through this thing. Yeah.
now, I've always said that among those, the best starting point, and those that are positioned on a strong foundation to build a super app is someone who's already nailed the payments part, because that's the hardest one to do for regulatory reasons, for logistical reasons. So when you look at something like Venmo or PayPal or just a number of other, those are the ones that I've always thought
Square is well positioned, you would think.
right?
Yeah.
Those are the ones I always thought have the easiest springboard towards super app. Now, a lot of those folks, we've talked to Mike Cohen from Square, and we've pressed him all the time. Do you want to be a super app? And he's usually like, no, we're just focused on the payments part.
I think I asked that question when we had him on stage in at our last event in San Diego, and I think he punted on, or I don't think he didn't embrace the question. He didn't embrace the idea at all.
Yeah.
You know?
So anyway, back to Twitter. Like, how does it align? How does its existing assets align with that list of things? It has a social graph. It has the communications mechanism. It doesn't necessarily have payments, but it has Elon, who has a great deal
worked on payments, and and right, he's the PayPal guy.
He's the PayPal guy, right? So like he could sort of replicate some of that magic. So if you look at it on paper, it actually has some of the ingredients to actually pull it off. Now there's still some of those, like, I don't know, cultural, for lack of a better term, factors that we were talking about, like, why hasn't a super app happened in the Western world? And like, I usually take a sort of like Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary approach to looking at, like, hey, the market has spoken. And if the market has spoken, there are good reasons, and we can break those down. But the bottom line is it, like, hasn't worked yet. But maybe it hasn't worked because of just not the right execution. So so I'd like to see them do it. I know there's a lot of haters out there right now. I'd like to see them. Everyone.
No. Elon haters, that's dime a dozen. I mean, that doesn't answer the question. But there's another element to this, which is, if you go, again, like I have traveled in a lot of, emerging markets, let's say, in general, data costs are very high. So the need for a super app is often driven by consumer price sensitivity.
There's other macro factors. You're right.
Yeah. And that's less of a fact. Again, it's, that tailwind doesn't really, or that supporting factor doesn't exist as much in places like Europe and North America, where people have a home screen full of apps that, like we just listed, they're social, Insta, a Venmo or whatever is popular locally, and Google for search, etc., and Amazon for buying stuff. And they're used to that. They're not really switching off that. The data costs really aren't a constraint for the most part. And I just think these are very different sets of market conditions. And I just do not see I can see the business case for wanting to have a super app like you described a moment ago. What I don't see are the demand signals.
Yeah. Now it's almost analogous for like the markets and the cultures within which these apps reside. Like, have the American way in terms of like having the best of breed app, and you go out and get the best one and fill your, that's so American, versus like an all-in-one app is almost like, has like some sort of socialist undertones. We don't want to get political here, and I say it mostly in like a comical way, but like, just it seems like it would just be hard to get Americans to be like, hey, just use this one thing for everything, just from like.
Well, we don't do that for anything, do we? I mean, there's like super app in our like IRL lives, is there? And I just don't think we're wired that way.
It's individualism.
I can't speak to Europe as much.
It's individualism, and these are all good things. I'm not trashing America or the American culture. These are good things. I love capitalism, but I think it's almost like a microcosm of the culture.
I think there's a more than a grain of truth to what you just said. I mean, I think, and that probably drives why we, have more, I don't know if we have more average apps on our phone screens than in other countries. I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
That would have been a good stat to look up before this conversation. My guess is yes, but I don't know. But yeah, our behavior is different. It's very baked in. And I just don't think, and again, Elon, not just Elon, Mark Zuckerberg has often expressed admiration for WeChat.
Yep.
And I think has had a desire to try to create something like that. And I think, and it's easy to get these names start to say one when you mean the other, but WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta, I think has always been sort of sitting out there as, why isn't that a super app, And I think in India,
Almost
there have
that. In
been,
some markets. Yeah. In some markets.
in some markets, it has super app, components to it. I think you can do shopping in India, and I know that WhatsApp is very commonly used by SMEs in emerging markets
That's true.
for e-commerce, so it has super app pieces, but it's not like the stack, the full stack super app that you think of like a WeChat, and I'm not sure that it ever will be,
You're not buying your movie tickets on.
No, I mean, not everywhere doing this. You're doing different things on WeChat in different markets. There's a lot of market specific partnerships for, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of regionally super app-y or super app-ish, but it is not emerged as a global super app, and nothing really has.
Yep.
And Connects do that. That's a big, big task. And, we'll see how committed. I don't. They haven't really rolled this out. I mean, we're just assuming this is the plan, And but assuming it is the plan, and I suspect it is, does he have the wherewithal? Is he willing to invest? Is there any chance? And I'm highly, highly skeptical.
Yeah, and one more factor there. I was thinking about this morning is that, besides all the factors we've mentioned, are they in a position in terms of momentum, in terms of a lot of other factors to do such a large pivot? And I think you could go either way on that because one, Twitter is somewhat in a position of weakness in terms of their user base deteriorating to some degree, advertiser base definitely deteriorating, cash position, all of those things in terms of like making a big pivot. But on the other hand, it could be argued that's the perfect time to pivot because you have less risk, less to lose, more of an impetus to sort of find that, plan B.
Yeah. Well, either they make this pivot, which seems to be the direction, or they try to recreate Twitter in a better form, which if that's what he's been trying up to this point, it hasn't worked because the ads have gone away and, it's kind of a mess. But anyway, okay, Mike, I think we've probably talked as much about super apps as we can in one episode. Why don't you tell us who you think won the week?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Adobe Firefly. So for those unfamiliar, that's Adobe's sort of generative AI tool. They've integrated it across the Creative Cloud. It's sort of like the generative AI tools that you know and love, DALL-E, Midjourney. Based on text prompts, you can create sort of artistic elements. And as we've pointed out in the past, including on this podcast, we're very bullish on Adobe and what they're doing here because their integration with the Creative Cloud, it has a built-in install base of creative professionals in marketing departments, in the art world, graphic designers, etc. And it's sort of, that's the vessel, that's the install base that they're sort of building on with sort of with AI. So that's been proven. I guess I buried the lead here. They've won the week because they just reached 1 billion users, and it's for all of those reasons that we that we have sort of theorized. They're just positioned really well based on that install base of creative pros in such a ubiquitous product as the Creative Cloud.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, Adobe
actually,
is,
you know what? But let me go back. I got that wrong. Not 1 billion users. Excuse me. 1 billion images generated. That's a different stat, but it's still equally.
It's still impressive. 1 billion.
Yeah.
Anytime you can say we've reached 1 billion something, it's a milestone, right? Okay. All right. That's a good one. So I'm going to be very quick with mine. And I'm going to go with Boston real estate developers. And why do I say that? So recently covered something where the city of Boston is offering basically developers a 75% tax break on commercial office to residential conversions. And this is something we talked about on a podcast a while back. It was episode 21, by the way. I did look it up. where we talked about this, what I'm hesitant to call a trend of converting offices into residences. The reason I hesitate to call it a trend is it's very difficult to do, but there is some data out there that says it's actually just a little bit more cost efficient to do a conversion than to build a brand new residential building. There is a residential shortage, in big cities, and an office glut, which we've talked about a lot. That has, emptied out downtowns. It's been, the reason it matters to locals, it's been very damaging to local small businesses in downtown areas. The sandwich coffee shop, the dry cleaner, et cetera, have been really damaged by this. There's a lot more data floating out there about whether, the back to the office movement is beginning to take hold, because of bosses saying you got to come back to work at least 3 days a week. There's some evidence out there that that's starting to show up in the amount of card swipes, and people entering office buildings and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of mixed data out there, but what is absolutely true is there's a lot of empty offices, and there's a shortage of new homes in big cities. And Boston is throwing some pretty strong incentives against this, and that's a big win for developers, I think. So that's why I'm citing that. Mike, why don't you read us out?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. And thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been This Week in Local. Stay tuned every week for more episodes. You can find the show on all major podcast networks and find out more at locology.com. So please subscribe, like, and comment. Your engagement helps others find us. So I'm Mike Bolin with Charles Laughlin. Our producer is Dara Sweat. So thanks for listening, and see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Locology's This Week in Local with Mike Bolin and Charles Laughlin. Be sure to subscribe for more.